Good morning, everybody. I hope you all had a good weekend and are looking forward to the week ahead. Can't believe it's June already. I'm sure most of you agree with that, but it is, so hey ho. So we look at the markets last week. We saw America was a mixed bag, albeit fairly flat. We had the Dow down 0.4%. As I mentioned before, the Dow seems to have remained pretty much flat all year round for the month and remains so. The Nasdaq was up a tiny bit, 0.2%. We saw the FTSE in the UK fall 0.9%. Again, nothing too dramatic there. It's worth noting that those three markets weren't open Monday, so that was based on 4 days trading. The Nikkei we saw fall 1.2%. We saw the DAX fall 1.8%. There was some positive news coming out of China. We saw the market over there up 4.2% last week. The main reason for that being that the A shares, which are shares that can be bought by Chinese only, which are traded on the Chinese exchanges, are now going to become part of the benchmark that MSCI use in their emerging markets index. So that obviously gives the shares a little bit of credibility, albeit, you know me, fundamentals in the bigger picture. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some of those profits come off, because after all, it doesn't mean a huge deal. If we look at the currencies, again, we saw the US dollar generally falling against all other currencies with the exception of the pound, and I'll come on to that in a minute. The main reason was we saw the worst jobs data come out of the US since September 2010, and on the back of that we saw a 2.2% fall in the dollar against the euro. We saw a 2.5% fall in the fall in the US dollar against the Aussie dollar, and we saw a 3.3% fall in the US dollar against the Japanese yen. Sterling, however, still continued to fall against the US dollar despite that jobs report, although we did see a pickup towards the end of the week. Again, this is all the talk of Brexit. There was a Brexit poll that came out. Those of you that read my monthly blog are aware of what my thoughts are on that. So, go ahead and read it. Long term, I don't think there's anything to worry about. I like to always mention pensions, and again, I hate to be the bearer of doom and gloom news when it comes to pensions, but it is a scary world out there with what's going on at the moment. The British Steel pension, what's happened last week was we had the government seriously considering actually linking the increases in the benefits to the consumer price index rather than the retail price index, which clearly the CPI is a lower figure. So again, there's more rationale out there which would lead you to believe if you do have any of these pensions and you are moved overseas and you are able to do something with them, come and see us and let's get this sorted out rather than become a victim of what's happening in the pension situation. So if we're looking at sports this weekend, I suppose there's only really one thing to talk about, and that, of course, is the passing of, undoubtedly the greatest sport and icon that's ever lived. There are, many sports arguments that go on around the world, who was greater than who was more of a legend than who, but I don't think there's a single person out there, whether you're a boxing fan or not, who cannot say that Muhammad Ali, as a person, as an athlete, is not the greatest sporting icon that's ever lived, and he's no longer with us. No doubt something of a blessing in disguise given the man's poor health for the last 32 years, because it was 1984 when he got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So he's had a tough time, albeit he's gone, but of course never, ever, ever forgotten. And rather than a money quote as such, we'll end with a quote from the great man himself, albeit this is not an interesting quote like some of his about, making medicine sick and all the rest of it. And one comment that he came out with was, "He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing." Now, obviously, putting that into my line of work, risks are out there. We all know that because we all know stock markets go up and down. But you need to manage that risk. And if you manage that risk properly and have the right financial advice in place, you'll be absolutely fine for your future well-being. Enjoy your week, guys. Thanks for listening. Bye.